So welcome, all you ambassadors, all you politicians, and all you curious. Welcome to the dispossessed, the disaffected, and the happen chances that just thought they would happen along. We invite you all to declare yourselves welcome. Maybe we could all do that in a bit of a welcome each other. Welcome!
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
We've gathered ourselves. We've gathered ourselves. We've gathered ourselves, and we're gathered here this evening to bring about the beginnings of a new state. We don't know what form that state will take, but I think there's something needed in response to the state of things. So we need a new state of mind, a new state of being, new states of what's that? Awareness. That's a good one. So we can play with that word a bit longer. So this is the page loading on this new state. We're kind of making up as we go along, and we're kind of adding bits. So that's what's happening there. So we noticed that up the river on the Clyde, at the Sandyford and Rhymer's prophecies of the last great battle, delegates gather. And we noticed a few blocks from here, just now, Scots law has been displaced by UN law and UK law, as if by magic.
Ooh.
So as this cop sprawls a few blocks from us, we set out to declare our independence, our interdependence, and our radical dependence on each other, on the earth, on all species. We wish to invoke older laws, indigenous laws from communities struggling for their territories in too many places around the world. We noticed that the treaty that established the Conference of Parties came into effect in the same year that Pollock Free State declared its independence in August 1994, over 4 years before a Scottish Parliament.
Yeah.
So who knows what happens this time around?
Independence.
Who knows? Much has taken place in the decades since. Habitats destroyed, babies born and grown up to adulthood.
Who are you looking at?
Species lost forever. Trees felled. Tears fallen. So much has changed. Much has taken place. But too little has changed. And for many, it is only worse. So we claim this territory as people of this place, as people of many different heritages who are in relationship with this place. We reclaim not only our lightning ways, the ways of our ancestors, all of them who are here with us tonight. We reclaim the future from those who lack the political imagination to know how to respond to the challenges brought about by climate change. Woo.
Yeah, yeah.
In the face of climate emergency, we no longer find it reasonable to put our faith elsewhere. There is no one coming. There is only us. Woo. We see the common cause that connects those standing in queues for the food banks here, or living alone, not sure whether to pay for heating or food, and those dispossessed of their territories and communities flung into conflict in every part of the world, while webs spin wide to win our attention with triviality or misinformation. We see the connecting threads between the streets here and the reality that defines our lives, and the landscapes destroyed and marked and being marked as we speak and gather here by wildfires, winds, waters, and other far from natural causes. So we thank the status quo, the vested interests, the bankrupt worldviews and institutions for delivering us this reality, but we now see we must reclaim responsibility for the contested territories of our collective futures. We set out to decolonize ourselves, one thought at a time, one mind at a time, one heart at a time, one bedroom at a time, one street at a time, one community at a time. This may seem unreasonable, but unreasonable times demand unreasonable measures.
Yes.
And in dreaming of the Pollock Free State, it was no small task. And one of the things I've been thinking of lately is the way in which the walls of Colin's flat in Govan were strewn with prayers to give him the strength to do what he was setting out to do. And I think that's also been going through our minds as we prepared for this. We're not sure whether this has been a good thing to do, a wise thing to do, but it felt like the right thing to do. And when we discussed it at our monthly assembly, we were aware that we were sticking our necks out, we were putting our heads above the parapet a bit with this, as Colin used to say. But everybody agreed that it felt like the right thing to do.
Damn
so
tootin'.
here we are. What's that?
Damn tootin'.
Damn tootin'. So here we are, and what better way to mark our 25th year? And I think we have to put a big thanks out to everybody who's been helping to create everything you've seen tonight. I mean, there's so many voices I couldn't even mention, but this wouldn't be possible, this new state, without the many volunteers and team members who've been working around the clock or lying awake at 3 a.m. with ideas, and all the additional team members that we've kind of drafted in that have been using the space and have ended up helping us out here. It's been absolutely amazing. So it's all a bit come together, but we really thank you for joining us. And together, we're dreaming a new state into being tonight. A playful exploration of power and legitimacy in the face of climate emergency, an act of solidarity with those communities struggling for recognition of their territories. We don't need anybody to recognise us. We can recognise each other.
Exactly.
We're no longer waiting. We've waited long enough. 26 cops is one cop too many.
Exactly. Represent.
So this is an antidote to climate fatalism. Oxygen for the political imagination we all need to respond to the challenges that confront us. And I mean, again, not quite sure where this is going to go. It's a bit of an experiment. But the many ways in which people have told us this has given them a little bit of hope in the midst of despondency they feel around both the negotiations and all of the people in there with the best intentions. Even if all we have done tonight and this week is to bring a little bit of hope to people, that's been worth it. That's been good enough.
Aye.
So I'm going to invite Alistair McIntosh now to say some words to pick up on these themes.
Well done there.
Our freedom is a noble thing. Words from the epic poem The Bruce by John Barber. In Scotland, the people are sovereign. What is sovereignty? To be sovereign is to be in our control of our destiny. What is our destiny? in the old Scots understanding of the word, reflected also in many other languages because its root is in the Proto-Indo-European, of which Sanskrit is a closing surviving remnant. In these words, in these languages that gave us the Duma in Russia, or the Doomsday Book in medieval England, in Scottish understanding, our doom is the opening of the people's way. Our doom is our destiny. We rest here, you pilgrims from many parts of the world who have converged to this sacred place that is Glasgow, to help to save the world, to get a life worth living. We rest here very close to the site of Doomster Hill in Govan, that was levelled for the building of warships, but which lives on in our souls. It lives on in our communities because our doom, the sense of law as doom, are the pathways by which we make community. I want to speak of three things. I want to speak of the cause of the last battle. I want to speak of the prophecies of the last battle. And I want to speak of the nature of the victory of the last battle that we here in Gael are working towards, not as politicians, not as warriors using outward weapons, because guns and knives are too blunt for this battle, but as poeticians, those who work with poeses, those who work with the deep making of reality. You see it all around you in this workshop. You will experience it in our people here at the Gael. Our great poet Hugh MacDiarmid said, a Scottish poet, maun assume the burden o' his people's doom, and they to break their living tomb. A Scottish poet must assume the burden of their people's doom and dare to break their living tomb. Our doom, our destiny, will be a doom in the relatively modern sense of that word, unless we take control of our own lives, unless we declare our independence. And that starts right here in the soul. It starts right here in every one of us. It builds up through our community. It builds up into the nation, not the state, but the nation as a community writ large. It extends into one world of a re-indigenizing people. You know what is driving climate change. The biggest driver of all is unfettered consumerism. that attempt to fill our inner emptiness by that which can't give no satisfaction.
Yes.
Because the real causes of what fills the emptiness are our relationships to one another and to the nature of place. And when those have been taken from people historically, no wonder we become empty consumers. No wonder we become addicts of whatever nature. And so the last battle is about both outward forces of politics and greed, and also the inner emptiness that people have been left with, stranded, high-tide, in a place like Govan here, thrown off the land, in places like the Highlands, the borders, the folk who got sent over from Ireland in the famine, a political famine, a colonial famine. To become fodder for wars and the Industrial Revolution, and now not wanted anymore. That's the nature of the last battle, and where will it be fought? The Gaelic bards are very clear on this matter, the Gaelic indigenous language of Scotland. From the romance of Thomas the Rhymer, the earliest versions of which are from Yorkshire in the 1430s. You'll say, how come Yorkshire? Well, let me tell you, I happen to have been born in Doncaster, and there is still an old statute that Doncaster is part of Scotland. Because the way peoples have moved and changed. So the earliest version of the Messiah of the Gaels, the Messiah of the heartland people, we say here we are all Gael. The Gael is the stranger, the foreigner. There is a little bit of the foreigner, the stranger, in most of us. Some of you perhaps are a lot of that. And there is a little bit of the Gael, the heartland people, in most of us. Our task is to become indigenous again to wherever we come down on this earth, so we can walk rightly with the doom, the law in the sense of that emergence of reality of a place. And the Gaelic bards said this, going back to the 1430s, in the romance of Thomas the Rhymer, of that last battle I shall say, it shall be done at Sandyford, just up the river there, just near where the cop's taking place. Of that last battle I shall say, it shall be done at Sandyford. Near Sandyford there is a cross, and near that cross there is a well, and near that well there is a stone, and on that ground there groweth there 3 oaks, and there at Sandyford the last battle shall be done. Prophecy of Thomas the Rhymer. Picked up again by Sheila MacDonald, the Bard of Keppoch, in 1715. Notice that our bards and our tradition are both women and men. Our unspoken legislators, our poeticians, are both women and men. Sheila MacDonald of Keppoch, 1715, the year of one of the great Jacobite uprisings. Justice has gone, and injustice has come. Look for yourself at the worth of the army. Thomas says in his prophecy that it's the Gaels who will win the victory. Every brow will be sweating blood, fighting the fight at the River Clyde. Right here.
Yay.
Right here. The last battle, prophesied multiple times, right here on the banks of the River Clyde. Because justice has gone and injustice has come in. So what will be the nature of the victory? We've just heard from Jehan MaCleod, who with her late husband Colin MaCleod founded the Gael at the Pollock Free State. One of Colin's favourite stories about the nature of the battle comes from a tradition of the clan MaCleod, the totem of which is the bull. We remember our tribal society. If you look at my kilt pin from Macintosh, you have the wildcat. The stag's head, the totem of Clan Mackenzie. The bear, the totem of Clan Mattison. The bull, the totem, the spirit animal of Clan MaCleod. And so on visiting MaCleod was the guest of a neighbouring chief who decided to put on a shocking spectacle to entertain his guests. Clearly the kind of person who had no inner life, no inner depth, no spiritual grounding, but looked instead to entertainment rather than to community. And so he brought out a prisoner tied to a frame and a wild bull, and the wild bull was to be let loose to gore the prisoner who had probably done some minor crime, like taking a salmon for the pot. And MaCleod was sitting watching this, thinking, this is not the way we should do our battles. This is not how we should fight things that are not right in the community. And he turned to his host and said, do we have to carry out this spectacle? To which the host replied, we do, unless you would like to take his place. And so MaCleod stepped forward. Remember that in the Christian tradition of St. Aquinas, the most important quality is courage. Without courage, all else will fail. MaCleod stepped forward and took the place of the prisoner. And there he was, tied to the frame, but with his hands free. And the wild bull was let loose and charged at him. And as it came, he grabbed it by the horns, both horns, and started wrestling the bull that was to gore him. And as he wrestled, and how many of you can identify this with yourselves? in your activism, whether for climate change, poverty, against war, or simply surviving in life. How many of you can identify with this? Because as he wrestled, he started to feel his strength failing. Not his courage, but his strength. And his own clan people, his own Gael were watching on. And as they saw this happening, they knew that no one of us can stand alone. No person is an island entire unto themselves. Each one of us is a part of the whole. And with one voice, just as his arms were about to fail, they called out what is now the motto of Clan MaCleod. Hold fast!
Ooh, 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 ooh.
Let's have it 3 times all together. Number 1.
Hold fast!
2.
Hold fast!
Louder!
Hold fast! Alistair MaCleod! You're new at MaCleod,
And
baby.
with one twist, he wrestled the bull harmlessly because he was a non-violent type of person. Concerned about animal life.
No animals were hurt.
And so the clan was saved. So that is the courage we need today.
Right, don't believe it.
Colin died on 2nd of November 2005 from a sudden heart attack that must have taken place, yesterday? Halloween. Tonight, 16 years ago, Jahan and the father of Iona, Owen and Tony fell with a heart attack and within a few tens of hours passed away. You'll see the moving story of our procession to his funeral back on the Isle of Lewis, same island that I was raised on, in the film The Birdman of Pollock. But before Colin died, he had a dream, and from that dream, he wrote a vision. A dream, I would suggest to you, of his own impending passing. For not all the warriors will see through the battles of our time. And yet they leave the vision. Seagulls fly around as I fall into the deep, swimming beneath the green brine. In the depths I drift far from the surface. I offer a song to heaven, a song of the Gael. My waterlogged mobile phone receives a faint signal, but I cannot reply. Not ever, not ever, except to sing the song of the Gael, heavenward forever.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
And so, friends, climate change, COP26. In the Hebridean tradition, there would be 3 great floods. The first great flood when God created the earth and the waters before the land came into being. The second great flood of Noah's Ark, when the animals went in 2 by 2. And then there is the third great flood. And in the tradition laid down by the bards, told by the bards in the Hebrides to this day, figures like Angus Peter Campbell, or in the version I'm telling you, coming from an old woman in Lewis, collected by Alexander Carmichael in the second half of the 19th century. In that tradition, the third great flood is yet to come. In the third great flood, the waters will start to inundate even the holy Hebrides. The bards tell us that where the churches are along the coastline, these will become the fishing rocks of the people. And the marled seal and the brown otter will leap and gallop like the children of men at play. I quote, a devastating vision. And yet, hold fast, because so much that is love will be lost, except Iona, except the most holy island, except that which is most holy in you and me and us and these holy places. And Iona will rise like a crown above the waves. Iona will rise like a crown above the waves. Because you can't kill the spirit. She's like a mountain, old and strong. She goes on and on. Iona, or whatever we might understand to be our spiritual tradition, will rise like a crown above the waves. That is what will endure. That is the nature of winning the last battle, the qualities of community, the qualities of togetherness, the qualities of ecological restoration and re-indigenization, the world around, the world around. I offer a song to heaven, a song of the Gael. My waterlogged mobile phone receives a faint signal, but I cannot reply, not ever, except to sing the song of the Gael, heavenward, forever, Gael!
Oh!
Well,
Exactly. There's nobody, with hands brave enough to fall on, you go in. Well done, Macintosh.
so
Brilliant.
we were depending on Alistair to add to the solemnity of the occasion, and
That's what we can hear you.
we were depending on you, Alistair, to add to the solemnity.
Let's be careful of each other, folk, especially if you're sitting near somebody who might be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, if you're vulnerable, if you feel you're vulnerable, if you're immunocompromised, maybe just ask people close to you to put their masks on. Just, I was in a gathering last night of 17 people, just 17, and we got a message today saying one of them had tested positive. So, you know, my wife and I were testing each day, and we're double vaccinated, and I'm just aware that some people here
Yes.
might feel a
You're
little bit
double
nervous.
vaccinated.
That was one of the things I meant to mention at the start, but you know, we've been kind of rolling with this a little bit. So I was saying we were depending on you to add to the solemnity of the occasion, and you certainly delivered on that one. So unfortunately for me, we are now into the Declaration of Interdependence,
Yeah.
and radical dependency. So radical dependence. So it's not down to me to speak, but Dorothy and David and Mac and Alan, I think, have all agreed to read a part of the Declaration. Would you like to? And then we'll invite you to. We'll invite you to sign. You know, this is what's difficult. I think is like we've been dreaming about what this would look like all for the last I don't know how long, and not literally dreaming, like waking up at 3 a.m. and I'm seeing so many faces, familiar faces and unfamiliar faces, which is brilliant. And so in our dream version of this dream state, we had the declaration all written out for people to sign bottom in quill. But that's this. The state is loading as we speak. So maybe tomorrow or the day after when you come, you will find that version. But it's all about what we make together. So we'll see. So and equally. Mac had said earlier he was up for it. It's probably at the fire-ish. With Max, there you go, Maxwell. You volunteered yourself now. You're going to read Max section. Ready? And then, so we'll read the declaration, and then we'll invite you to. Well, at some point during the meal or the next part of the evening, you can go and sign the declaration in the front room and print your passport. Hopefully, this is the start of a new state. Or Max, we've got a map. This is a map. No. That's okay. No.
Oh, you say no.
Yeah.
That's all.
We all clear.
Do I say Max?
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another, respect for humankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all beings are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the chance to fulfill their potential, that to secure these rights, the natural laws of ecology bring equilibrium and fairness to all. These laws alone are preeminent.
In human terms, governments are instituted amongst people, deriving their power from the consent of the governed. To ensure liberty, equality and survival, whenever any system of government becomes destructive of these ends, thereby threatening the existence of all life, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it in order to effect liberty and survival.
Yo!
Our causes are these: centuries of colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism have impoverished most of the world, destroyed cultures and ways of being and knowing which have been millennia in the making, devastated ecosystems and biospheres, and led to the genocide of so many human and more than human beings that our hearts simply cannot fathom the scale of the loss and the pain. Every single life lost so far in the name of profit and imperial expansion is a crime. At this precise moment in time, we are now teetering at the edge of the complete devastation of all life on our common home, Earth.
The stable system that kept all alive without endangering the future has been turned on its head in the interest of the selfish few in this land, this Scotland. 500,000 people were cruelly evicted and deprived of what was rightfully theirs. Many were deported to the colonies to drive the process of enclosure even further and inflict the same pain on other people of the earth. Those that remained had no choice but to flock to the cities and become a part of the working class.
The age of industry is now dead and our labour no longer needed. We live poor lives on the pittance given to us from the profits we have raised, dependent on handouts from those that deprived us of our rightful inheritance. Many of us have lost the self-respect needed by free people.
Not content with owning and destroying the land, the powerful seek to stymie our protests and ban access to our own city, a city in which motorways continue to tear up our communities and exclude those with the least.
We take this step with great reluctance, and it is our intention to maintain peaceful and respectful relations with Her Majesty's Government of the United Kingdom, Scottish Government and the Glasgow City Council. Nevertheless, it is our view that the workings and functions of the capitalist state and all its institutions globally, nationally and locally mean it is simply not possible to achieve a socially just and ecologically regenerative future within the bounds of these structures, compelled by the need to meet the interests of the global transnational class. Our democratic institutions continue to make decisions which are unfair, destructive and oppressive. And their behaviour so unreasonable in the face of our appeals for a livable, just planet that we can face no choice but to separate and determine our own future.
Yes.
Democracy, the will of the people, has not been used. More mindless economic growth will generate still more of the sickness that it claims to alleviate. We therefore maintain that the global threat to our environment and liberty from the powerful is incompatible with sustainable environmental use and any notion of democracy.
Finally, are you ready? We, the people of the new state, the governed free state, do solemnly publish and declare ourselves to be forthwith absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown and our autonomous territories hereof be known as the governed free state.
Government in your bastards! recognise them.
We call on
Oh,
all
yeah.
people who share our beliefs, ideals and aspirations to declare their own independence, interdependence and radical dependence, to decolonise their territories however they may define them.
We no longer find it reasonable to put our faith elsewhere. There is no one coming. There is only us. And for us, that means each other in Greater Govan on Glasgow's south side.
We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes and our honour. We fight not for glory, nor riches, nor honours, but for freedom alone. With this statement we say, declare yourself welcome.
Freedom!
Thank you, people.
So there's one thing I forgot to say is that is based on the Declaration of Independence at Pollock Free State. So we've kind of like amended it slightly, but I think it has power in how much weight that carries now, or how much more weight these words carry now, 27 years after they were the first declaration was made in 1994. And the Declaration of Independence at Pollock itself was drawn from some of the things that inspired Colin and many others that are here tonight, the Declaration of Our Growth, but also the US Constitution, which Colin was really fond of telling people was itself inspired by the Confederacy of the Iroquois Nations. So I think, who's going to do the grace? I mean, is that...
I could do the Ireland grace.
Oh, okay. And we've got our own grace. And the other thing is, if you're here and you do any social media, I know this sounds a bit out of place, but please hashtag Govan Free State, because what we're trying to do is get the word out there, because I think people are really enjoying we've had some beautiful, lovely responses and people sending cakes over, and so we want to spread that word of a creative and playful response to some really quite solemn challenges that we're facing, but also hopefully invite other people. We're going to create a downloadable pack so that people can declare a free state wherever they are. So we're going to have a grace we're going to have a special guest grace from Iona, and then we'll have our, you going to do it, or is it? And then we're going to eat. Yeah.
I see, but just before we complete the grace, and then we're going to go and get some delicious food. Big thanks to all the cooks that have been sweating away in the kitchen.
I was just having the same thing myself.
And to the delivery drivers and the shop workers and everybody who was involved in producing that.
The thing I would like to say about Alison MaCleod, Alison Macintosh.
Get your Macs mixed up.
Sorry.
Get your Macs mixed up there.
Alistair McIntosh. Phenomenal intellect. And the thing that we need to understand as we move forward as a people together in this glorious free state, we need to have good thinkers. Things will keep us right.
No!
We need good thinkers. And I'm so proud to have this man as part of what the Gael is. And I know there's great thinkers amongst us all.
Yo! And you're here, Alistair.
The MacArthurs are here and all. And
the MacArthurs.
the thing that Alistair's kindly done is he's released a new book, and it is available for all these new members of the Free State, the Govan Free State. If you want to go up and see Tony at the back there, he's got them. And what he's looking for is a
Sounds certainly
contribution.
shifty.
Oh, he's up the back there.
Only up the back.
Colin McKenna. He's a Gael.
Still at the back of a lorry.
Big Charlie's flinging it up there as well. So, listen, people, we're going to give thanks for this grace. Oh, Max was going to say something.
No, I'm sorry, I hope I haven't seemed to
Nope.
push myself forward here.
Absolutely
No,
not.
not
This
at
is
all.
a- this is a
27
30
years ago.
state-
27 years ago, I'm a journalist and a cynic, and Alistair McIntosh asked me to come through to see the Pull at Free State, and I thought very cynical. And here I am 27 years later, still standing here. And honestly, there is nowhere on the planet I would rather be. And I've always wanted to give this prayer from Iona to the Gael. And it seems that serendipity has pushed me forward here. So here's the Iona prayer. O Christ, the Master Carpenter, who at the last, through wood and nails, purchased man's whole salvation, wield well thy tools in the workshop of thy world, so that we who come here. Next line, please, Alison.
Rough hewn.
Rough
hewn.
Rough hewn, may there be fashioned to a truer beauty by thine hand. I've always felt that prayer was right for this room, and it is my very great privilege to give it to you now. Thank you for your time.
Oh!
So if you can have a wee look at your bit of paper, this was written by a Gael many years ago, and it's very fitting.
Oh, did somebody print them?
Yeah,
Oh,
we just
brilliant.
pressed on that. So we'll start it off. We're cast into a crazy world with many a sore disgrace, where greed overturns compassion and respect is laid to waste. They wonder then when we are here, with brethren men distinguished, whose grasp on human kindness will never be relinquished. And share a cup and give a hand to those who share this greeting, to be a red face and earn a place at Gael's weekly meeting. So as we meet, let all think well on the value of this plan, that feeds our bodies, hearts and minds, to help us make us
That's us getting new members of the governing team. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Explain to folk the
I don't
plan.
know if I've seen a lot of fighters though, Jerry. Just a few lovers.
So we back
A lot of lovers.
for a minute. Just explain to folk the plan for food. Scotland has a criminally bad reputation for food, so we've laid on, which I think is undeserved because we have some of the most fantastic food anywhere, I think. So we've laid on lamb from Tyree, venison from Perthshire. We've got shellfish from the sea.
Iceland.
Scottish.
Asda? No.
It's not from Asda, it's from Tyree as well.
Oh, wow.
It's a bit of cherry soup nepotism on my part. So there's a big, massive pot of veggie stuff and potatoes as well. So what we're going to do is, if folk can grab a head round by the lockers past the kitchen, we've got the tables set up. Oh, there's mussels as well. Head round past the lockers, grab a plate. There's probably slightly more people than we'd imagine, so be modest in your first portion. And go round out the shutter and then back in. You can eat in here or you can eat in the space outside. And just to say thanks very much again. And no, out that way and back, and then back in.
By the green light.
Yeah. So by the green lights, out that way, and back in. And thanks again to the cook.
I've got a feeling we're not going to get any more Soverign.
There'll be music here afterwards, and there'll be passport printing in the cabinet office of the government.
Passport, man. I know.
Does that mean I have to give up a public free state passport?
Alright, Biggie. That was brilliant. That was moving.
But you're firing me up back in the
I
table.
know. Oh, come on, you bastard. Fucking brilliant. Alright, then, that was well done with the three and that. That was great.